Let's see what's happening.
Hello.
I was just sharing a link.
Can you see us? Tell me if you can see us. Tell in the Kelly if you can see us. Tell us that you can see us.
Well, I can see us.
I can't. I don't know if that's me. Oh, there we can. Oh no.
Yes. It's like at the cinema, Charlie. Please keep all devices on mute.
Sorry.
We are now broadcasting live from my father's bedroom.
And my bedroom.
Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and this is Charlie. And today we are here talking about my book, Our Doris, the first in a series of books starring Mrs. Doris Copeland. This is part of the Literally Doris Readalong. And if you haven't done the Literally Doris tag yet, then we're incredibly disappointed in you.
Or if you want to just tell us, if you don't have a channel and you ever want to just tell us some of the answers, randomly message us, feel free.
That's perfectly okay.
Yeah, we love to hear all of it.
Some of us do.
He wants to hear too. He loves it.
It's true, eh? Just yeah. Don't do like some people have done in the past and send me a message full of notes about what you didn't like. Oh, hello, Emily. Hello, Kelly.
Hello, Emily. Well. Hello, Emily. It's nice. Thank you very much for joining us. This is going to be really, really chilled and really, really cozy, just like you expect, and probably a little bit crazy, just like you'd expect from a Charlie and Charlie event.
It's probably a little less crazy considering it is 7:30 in the evening, and
well, you know,
I've used up all the energy I have to converse with humanity by now.
Me and Charlie spoke for like 4 hours earlier. Possibly more.
I just said this to my mother. I just said that when we finish this, we will have spoken to each other for about 5 or 6 hours today.
Yeah.
It's just like Crew all over again.
But yeah, it's not like a chore. It's not horrible. It just it does go by in a blink though. Oh no, don't worry, Kelly, if you don't have a channel. It doesn't matter. You can still just tell us. We still love to hear from you, all your thoughts and all your musings. It's just an excuse to be able to for us to be able to watch and talk to you. So if you don't have a channel, you can still talk to us. So we're happy either way.
See, this is why we have Charlie. She's the kind one.
I am not. I'm just as salty as this one. Nope.
That one. This one.
How are you guys anyway? Tell us how your evening's going. We'll probably natter for maybe like 5 or 10 minutes and give everyone a chance to sort of like come along. So you just tell us how you guys are doing, what your days have been like. Like Charlie just mentioned, we've already been recording today, so we've had.
Yeah, you'll find out just what is it over a week?
Yeah, next week.
Yeah, you'll figure out why we're talking in just over a week.
Next Wednesday.
Yeah. Emily says that she is starting Indisputably Doris tonight.
Oh, exciting.
Which I suppose we can ask the question whilst we're waiting to find out how they are. Also, who joined us and read Our Doris this month? Well,
yes.
Last month. Yeah.
Yes,
who joined us in reading Our Doris in January?
And did you have fun like we did?
Did you hate it with every single fibre of your being? We will accept that as well.
Charlie will hear all of it. He don't care, do you?
Yeah, I have heard it all.
I do care. So if you start being horrible, I'll get cross. Because Charlie's my best mate. So if anyone starts being horrible, you're out. Right, here we go. You know what I've been doing, my Charlie? I read it for the 3rd time. Yeah, Emily is obsessed with your book. She reads it every single January. She just loves it. So
I mean, I know for a fact that I'm beating her with 3. I've read it more than 3 times. But then I wrote the darn thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's fair. My phone's gonna get boiling hot, so I'm gonna turn us off of my phone. So I've got my notes instead.
Callie very kindly says that she loved Our Doris, and it's 2:30 wherever she is.
Yeah, whereabouts in the world are you, Kelly?
And Emily wants it to be known that she is indeed Charlie's best mate.
Sorry. I love you, Em. You're my fave too.
This argument happened in Crew as well.
Yeah, I think
The
it did.
FaceTime.
Yeah, I think it did in person when we were on the phone. Because like, I'm sure you know Kelly, if you would have watched us probably before. You know, when me and Charlie got together in person in Crew, the world didn't end. Like nothing bad happened, but yeah, Emily FaceTimed us, and you can say.
Well, it's just it's a catch-all phrase from Emily now of Charlie's my friend too.
Yeah, it's true. That's what she says. I've spoken to Charlie now. That's it. It's a done deal.
It's the title of Emily's first single.
We watch it. We love it. We love you, Em. Say hi to the kids. The kids watching Em. Hi, Mia. Hi, Thomas.
If I thought there were children watching, then I would have modified my language.
They don't care. They hear it worse from Em anyway. I shouldn't say that. Yeah. Oh, she's in the US. Kelly says she's in the US, Charlie. You can say that. You can highlight that one.
Yeah, we can highlight Kelly being in the US.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to join us. We really appreciate it. What have you been up to today? Have you done anything good, Kelly? What have you been doing? She said, read, highlight. That's really lovely. You can read it, Charlie.
I happily found you on one of your Christmas lives.
Oh, which is so lovely. That's so wonderful. I'm so pleased that you joined us for that. The Charlie Christmas crackers was our favorite thing we did. It was like, for me, like it was just so much fun. Every single week we'd tell our stupid naughty jokes. Charlie thinks my jokes
even though I think each episode was about
an hour long,
an hour and a half long, wasn't it? But we were here until about 2:00 every single day. We were like 4.5 hours to 5 hours chatting to do an hour and a half video. This is what happens with us.
But that editing was a nightmare of those videos. That was a nightmare.
It really, really was.
And you were busy during that time. I think I tried to absorb the heavy weeks for you. But
yeah, and you never told me how busy you had been during those weeks either.
Oh no, but it's never as busy as you. It's fine. You know, mums are always busy. So, what's Kelly saying? Kelly said
Kelly has been doing chores and getting ready to come and watch us discuss all things Doris.
Oh, she's the best. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kelly. And Emily said that the kids are upstairs, so don't worry. Okay, that's fine.
Oh, good. We can swear as much as we like
then. We will do then, won't we? We're so bad. We've got such potty mouths. It's really. I'm actually worse than Charlie.
I was about to say, weirdly, I do believe that you're worse than me.
It's true. I am worse. Should we start? Should I make a start on some of the?
Let's.
Should we wait 2 more minutes to be precise till 22?
No, let's just start talking about the Doris stuff. People know why they're here.
That's fair enough. So, should we say the first thing I was going to say about is we're here to chat about Doris. But do you guys want to hear about Charlie's background a little bit? Just a little bit, briefly touch upon Charlie's background as in like how Charlie became a writer and things like that. Do you want to start about that? So,
how did Charlie become a writer?
Yes.
Well, basically, because he was a child who heard that writing was a relatively cheap occupation. All you needed was a pencil and some paper. So I was like, yeah, I can do that. And I was hearing about certain celebrity writers who apparently came from impoverished backgrounds. I was like, well, I'm poor. I can do this. So about the age of 6 or 7, I was like, that's it. I'm going to be a writer. And then now here we are 24 years later, actually having done it.
Amazing.
So, yes, then I wrote my first novel at the age of 11. And
do you remember the name of it?
What was that one? I can't remember the name of it. I know that my hero was called Adam Black, and that it was a spy thriller that stole sex scenes from James Bond and Mills and Boon, because I was writing it for adults because I thought, well, that's going to be the best market. Children's very niche. And I was just thinking about money at the time, certain that obviously someone was going to publish this. And yeah, so it was obviously completely terrible, written by an 11-year-old. And
it was brilliant.
Well, I doubt anyone's ever going to know. Because I do not have a copy of it. I burned it.
No, you didn't actually burn it.
I did. My father was having a fire, so I burned it.
No.
I burned that. I burned So then I wrote another novel that I started on Boxing Day, probably 2004, 2005. And this was a children's book. Set fire to that. I burned a lot.
Oh, no. I was kind of hoping it'd be like a Phoebe situation where it's like found many years later, and you get to look at it.
No, because I'm not like I'm not like Jane Austen. I'm not about to have somebody find all of my juvenilia. No, that can stay firmly in the past.
Or in the compost heap of your garden.
Sorry?
Or in the compost heap of your garden.
Oh, definitely, yes. And so really, the story that I tried to get published in 2013 and had agents looking at, I originally wrote the first draft of that story when I was 15 and continued to write that throughout uni. And so I went to MMU for creative writing and got my degree. And whilst there, I wrote the monologue, Bread, that's in the back of Our Doris. And originally the characters weren't Harold and Doris in that. I don't even think they had names.
Oh,
and it was only cut to my second year of uni, and I joined the Macclesfield Creative Writing Group in the break between first year and second year. And one week, as I've said many times now, Phil Poyser, who's a local poet whose books I recently showed because he just released his third and fourth collection, was hosting a writing workshop that week, and he gave out this prompt saying it was to do with gardening. You had to write something about gardening. I knew nothing about gardening, and I just remember coming up with the line, Our Doris has developed an unhealthy obsession with slugs. And that kept going through my mind. And so eventually I wrote that down. And then anytime I was stuck, I would write an Our Doris story. So before I actually, over time, people started saying, when are you going to write a book about Doris? And people began to want to hear about Doris and Harold. In those writing bursts, they got into some silly situations that never would have made it to the book. There were actually about 50,000 words of Doris before I went and wrote this book, and I cut 40,000 of them.
Wow.
They couldn't have made it into a book. There was one in which Doris was walking down Tesco, because we were writing about Halloween one week, and she was walking down an aisle in Tesco and found that one of the aisles was haunted, and she told a ghost off and then left. That sort of thing. They were just really stupid ones. But the ones that could come together and create a story actually ended up in the book.
Oh, that's amazing. I just love that. And the first line is such an iconic line to Doris. And I love the story of how Doris came to be. And it's just wonderful.
Yeah, as soon as I decided that it was going to be a book, which was thanks to Margaret Holbrook, who released a book called Cul-de-sac Tales, and that kind of gave me the format, and I knew it was going to be a series of monologues, whereas I'd say later on we're heading more towards the final book being a novel, and not necessarily in that monologue format anymore. Was because of that, but I also always knew that it had to be the first line, and it was the gardening thing that gave me the overall story for the entire book. And also because Margaret had been part of a garden safari, and as soon as she said she was doing that, I was like, there we go, there's the story.
Anyway, I think Kelly wrote something.
Kelly says, I'm sure it was very good. I wish you didn't burn. No, it really was terrible. And I couldn't have shared any of it anyway, because as I say, I did steal very big scenes from the the Mills and Boon books, and I'd have been hit with a plagiarism suit. And also, I'm never going to write a spy novel again. It was just popular at the time, and I thought that that's what people wanted.
See, that was going to be the next question.
We could talk about that as well. Emily, I love Doris, but Harold is my favourite character.
I love Harold. I'm 100% with you. Harold is my favourite too.
And I could see Doris telling a ghost off. Yeah, she did incredibly well, and she's still left with her lasagna.
I definitely
what was your next question then?
I was just going to, obviously, so that leads you up to your writing process, but obviously I know there was a big push in getting it sort of like into the world a bit more. So do you want to talk about
you want the Joy Winkler story? Okay,
so Joy Winkler story.
I talk about Joy Winkler a lot. She's referenced in the back of in the acknowledgements of all my books, and she was the editor of Indisputably Doris, and beta read Indisputably Doris and Heir to Murder and Royally Doris. And so Joy was the creator of the Macclesfield Creative Writing Group. She's also the person who took me and gave me my work experience in my second year of uni, and is former Cheshire Poet Laureate. And if you were in the north of England in the last 10 years, you might have been to see one of her performances, because she did go and do 2 performances, one called Town, one called Lightning Under Their Skirts, and they toured all over the north of England. Anyway, I'd been toying with the idea of releasing Doris for a very long time. I think I went back and forth over self-publishing the book, because there was still, when I was about to bring the book out, this stigma against self-publishing your work. And so much so that even when I talked about being happy about being a published author, an actual friend of mine said to me, well, you're not. It doesn't count because it's not traditionally published. So I'd ummed and ahed over it for a while. I only had 4 monologues written out of the 10 that make up the book. Yeah. And this is January 2015. The book came out in June 2015. And Joy had been asked to appear on an author panel at Knutsford Library alongside 4 other writers, and they were looking for a man. And the man that they wanted to go, certain people didn't want to be on this panel. And so I don't know who that was. I've still never asked. It's not my place. But Joy said that she knew somebody who had a book coming out in 2015, and she'd ask him to go. That writer was me. I didn't have a book coming out. I'd got no plan to, but she did it to push me into bringing the book out. I was strong-armed into it. I turned up with the first chapter of Doris on A4 paper, and just had flyers saying coming in June 2015, and I had to hastily create a cover then.
There's a whole other thing, we can talk about that in a minute.
But yeah, so Joy was very much the reason that the book came out in June 2015, and there wasn't any trying to get in with traditional publishers then. Despite the fact that quite a few people have said since reading it, one friend said it was the most commercial piece I'd ever written, and somebody else said that they could have seen it being traditionally published, especially alongside other works that are out at the moment. But hindsight is a fantastic thing.
No, but yeah, I think it's so. I'm glad that you've done. I think you've done amazing with it, and also I don't think it's true that self-published books aren't properly published books. I mean, that's rubbish. That's complete rubbish.
No, I think there's been a bit of a change since then. But when I brought the book out, the stigma was definitely still there.
Because I think now there's a big thing to support indie authors, etc., and self-published. And I think that, there's a whole community surrounding it, isn't there? So yeah. Have any of you guys got any? I
was just going to highlight Callie's comment.
Oh, here you go.
I'm sorry your friend said that. I think it's so commendable that you self-publish. That's very kind, Callie. And
Yes,
I
I
don't
agree with
think
you.
that I don't know whether she has the same problem today.
Yeah, no, quite right. Yeah, I agree with you. Right, where do I want to go next? What did I say? Oh, I know what I was going to say about. So, another thing before we like get a bit more into like the actual book itself, we said I was going to say about because obviously Charlie, this book has got older characters in, and so what are your thoughts about the importance of having older characters in and like making them authentic? Because we've had a conversation about this before, but just in case you haven't seen it.
So I always knew that I wanted to write a book about older characters. Originally, I'd had this idea that I was going to write a cozy crime series about older characters solving crime. And it was all to do with the way in which older people were perceived in terms of fiction and on the screen. A lot of the time, if they were in a movie, they were either turning up as comedic relief or they were turning up to die and teach the protagonist something. It was as though they had no real function at all. They had nothing else going on in their life. Similarly, you'll see it all the time on the television in soaps or dramas. They really just exist to be something of a hindrance on family members or somebody who's going to give them this long needed inheritance for some reason. And I just wanted to show that there was actually characters with, there was life after 70 years old. That people do continue to have lives after 70, and they do continue to go out and do things and get into arguments and get into messes.
And all of the characters within your book, obviously, if you've read it, I know you guys have read it. You two have read it. So yeah, they're all very distinct and they're all very different. They've all got they're like all of the characters in Charlie's book. They're older characters that you can really tell them apart there. So then.
Although Charlie does sometimes get mixed up with their first names, as evidenced earlier this week. But that's a tale for a different day. We can talk about that when we talk about Indisputably Doris.
That's exciting.
But yeah, it was just this. I wanted to write a book about older people, and I wanted them to, similar to what Roy Clark said when he set out to write Last of the Summer Wine, which was he'd been asked to write a TV show about these older characters, and then realized that he had to do it from his perspective, which was just having them behave like him and his friends were at that time. And when it came to me writing this, it was a case of thinking, well, there's still, I mean, there are some times where I've written something and I've been like, no, that might be a bit too young for the characters, but then like, just let them do it. Let them have a go. Let's see what they can do with a new hit.
Emily's just got to go. Bye, darling. We love you lots.
All right, ta-ra, Emily.
Yeah. So, should we go through about? I'll go through my notes. I've got different sections. Do you want to talk a bit? Go straight. Do you want any more like authory type questions? Because I can do that. Or do you want to talk about a bit more about the book?
We can go through all the questions. We can do all the questions. We can do Doris questions.
And we ask Kelly what she wants. Oh, Gayna's here as well. Hi, Gayna.
Oh, well, it is funny that you should say that, Gayna. During lockdown 2020, I did release the entirety of Our Doris on my YouTube channel. So if you do go and search, you can find me reading all 10 of the monologues. Of course, not to a studio standard. I don't yet have that kind of money, but one day I would very much like to have the opportunity to create an audiobook. But as Charlie and I have also discussed in the past, I think that I would also, if I had the money and that wasn't an object, get an older actor to inhabit Harold's voice.
Yeah, that's another thing we spoke about in because if there's anything we kind of missed from here, you feel like we've missed it. Any questions you have as you're watching, bring them up, because that's, and like obviously this is a conversation with you guys too. So any part that if you want Charlie to expand upon it a little bit more, feel free to say it in the comments.
And it'll be even better once he's finished his tea.
Yeah, he's got his tea and I got my water.
Right, there we go. That's gone. I can settle in now.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So feel free to say anything if we're missing anything. And there's also like in case if you do want to after we finish with this, I have done a full author interview with Charlie that Charlie can either future.
It's a fantastic watch because on the day I started succumbing to an illness, so you get to see me as I slowly just.
And Charlie, when we were doing it, Charlie was like, "I'm not ill. This is classic. This is what we do as Charlies." Charlie was like, "I'm not ill. I'm not ill." I'm like, "Charlie, I really think you're getting poorly, mate." And he's like, "No." And
I was completely ignorant to it. I refused to admit that I was ill, and Charlie's there.
I know you better than you know yourself. This is proof.
And this is what Charlie said to me at the time.
Yeah. So we will be going over a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
But if there's anything,
Charlie doesn't mind. He likes talking about himself.
Which is fine. But yeah, if there's anything like if you feel like you've missed any part of it and you want to, so you can go watch the video for that as well, because we might be some more little things that we might miss today. So yeah.
I did just think of another writerly thing, but I don't know whether it comes into any of your questions.
Oh no, go for it, Charlie, because this is like I've got like
why I wrote it the way I did write it.
Go for it, Charlie.
Okay, so I should have thought about this. So it came after I left uni, and so when I left uni, I'd got all these ideas about how I ought to write in my head.
Yeah.
And it's something I continually say now to anyone who wants to learn creative writing and wants to go off and be a writer in future, that a creative writing course is beneficial if you want to know the way you ought to write. But it can also hinder you in some ways, because once you know all these rules and you're constantly thinking about them when you're trying to write. And so I was finding it really difficult to settle down to write anything, because I was constantly thinking, well, this needs to do this, and the story has to be shaped in a certain type of way. You can't use this word because it's telling over showing and all that. So when it came to writing Doris, I specifically threw all of that out of the window and leant further into the comedic voice that I'd avoided for all these years, because I worried that it was not literary enough to be in a book. So that is another reason that Doris came out, and why Doris is written in the fashion that it is written. One, because it was heavily inspired by Alan Bennett and Victoria Wood and Roy Clark to some extent, but also because I really just was going through this almost rebellious writers phase where I was just like, no, I'm not going to do anything the university told me to do at all. It's all going, and if people don't like it, goodbye to them, good riddance. And that's why sometimes you'll get a segue, because I'll just be like, a few days later this happened, and I've just skipped over anything that could have been a plot. Like nowadays I'd be there trying to figure it out and be like, okay, what did they do in these 3 days? And like, nah, 3 days later they've done everything they need to do. We can sort this now. I'm going on. I'm moving on now.
I love that so much. So you were saying about, you touched a little bit on your inspirations. Do you want to talk a bit more about like those inspirations and your
Talking Heads by Alan Bennett. To go back, I should say that one thing I discovered at uni was radio plays. I always knew they were there, but I'd never listened to them because I always thought that I just thought they were the Archers. That was it. I didn't realize that they could be as good as they are and have the power that they do. And to be fair, the Archers has had powerful moments in when I've listened to it and I've been like, oh, I can't believe that was on the radio. I wouldn't have had the same reaction had I seen that on television. They can get away with shock a lot more. But I discovered Talking Heads by Alan Bennett whilst I was at university, specifically the Thora Hird one, which it might have been a cream cracker under the settee, where it's just incredibly moving, incredibly tragic, but also so honest and true to character. And I knew that I wanted to write something similar that would, whether or not it made anyone else feel the same way, would make me feel the same way I felt listening to that the first time. The Roy Clark influences are, of course, Last of the Summer Wine and Keeping Up Appearances.
When a couple of people that I've spoken to, like they've said about Last of the Summer Wine, and they can see that. So yeah.
I always, when I used to advertise the book, I used to say that Doris is like Hyacinth Bucket, but with a tendency to throw table lamps. Because when Doris is first on the scene, she's a lot more aggressive than she is nowadays. And Victoria Wood, just because it's Victoria Wood. And as we've talked about in our Christmas Cracker videos, if there was any writer that I idolised, it was and is Victoria Wood.
Yeah, she was a British comedian. She starred in loads of different shows, particularly Dinner Ladies is Charlie's favourite.
Yeah, Dinner Ladies, I couldn't say how many times a year I watched that.
It's like a sitcom. Explain what it is, because obviously Kelly might not know what
it's a sitcom that lasted for 16 episodes over 2 years, following the lives and loves of a group of dinner ladies in a factory canteen. And at the heart of that, you have the character Bren, played by Victoria Wood. And
that's Northern as well. It's like Northern characters as well. It was
Northern as well, which, again, Northern influences for Our Doris. Indeed, Doris can be incredibly regional at times.
Which, again, we'll get onto.
Yeah. But, yeah, Dinner Ladies, favourite sitcom, and yeah, it's one of those things where I go back and I rewatch it now, and there's still things every time I rewatch it, I come up with further theories about what one thing could have meant to do with the show. Like, oh, we should have known this was going to happen because she did this here. And it's, even though I said when I threw all the rules out of the window, when I look at Dinner Ladies now and think about the whole showing over telling thing and not giving away too much, it has ended up being one of those shows that you can go back to and you can look at stuff and you can see things that might have just been a joke and think, oh, wait a second, it might not have been a joke. It's actually very telling for future episodes and where the character storyline is going to go.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, yeah, and it so makes me laugh because I'm losing my train of thought because I was seeing the comments go along the screen. Yeah. When Charlie says about like his theories, that's one of my favorite things that you do, because Charlie doesn't just do this with Dinner Ladies. You do it with lots of different things, which I love this about you, Charlie. Like if you're like for instance Doctor Who, if like we watched Doctor Who, like when Doctor Who comes back on, like when it did come back on, we were watching it together, and Charlie's great. What if you're reading a book with Charlie, it's the same with you as if you're reading a book, isn't it? And you just go onto there's so many different avenues, and it's brilliant. Charlie's mind, if you guys have read the books, Charlie's mind is amazing. It is, yeah, I love that about you. I love it. Do you want to read some of the comments?
Yeah, so Callie again, glad you followed your instincts and rebellion. I know it's the most rebellious I ever was. You don't usually get that in the north.
Rebellious, that's a lie. I know you're
Today is how it's pronounced, Charlie. I know. But I can't do it. And then I wish I could watch it. Yeah, I don't know how you could. It might. I don't know whether it's on a BritBox thing. I don't know whether you can get it.
It doesn't exist anymore. It's turned to ITVX.
Oh, is that what that is now? Okay.
ITVX is content. I don't know whether the US viewers can get that.
And I don't know whether iPlayer works in the US either. But hopefully one day the American folk will get to learn of the wonders that are Victoria Wood.
Yeah, because you're missing out. I think YouTube has got quite a lot, actually.
Yes, it has. It's got the entirety of the film Pat and Margaret on there, because that's how I watched that. Yeah.
I'm trying to think what I was going to head to next. What do you guys want to know a bit? Do you guys want to know about like Charlie's like journey in terms of writing? Like, I know obviously you've heard about the history of how Doris came to be, but do you want to know a bit about Charlie's writing process in terms of constructing the book and how you write your books? Not like specifically.
Good, because that could be difficult.
Yeah. Do you guys want to know about that, or give them a second to answer, or do you want to talk a bit more about the actual characters? So you guys can, we can, because I'm trying to make this, like I said, a bit interactive with them. So do you want to talk about the characters now, or do you want to talk about like how Charlie writes a book, goes about writing a book? We can do either of those things. We'll let you tell us what you want to hear about more.
I mean, there's only 3 of them. I think two of them are us.
Oh, I'm not on there now. Okay.
Right. Oh, there's 4 of them. One of them is me.
I'll go and have a look now. Okay. And then that's 5 because I've just gone on there. So yeah, there you go. Yeah, I'll come off again.
Oh, I think you'll just have to ask a question, Charlie.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Should we go on to talking about the characters?
Wherever you want to go.
What do you want to do, Charlie? What does Charlie? This is what I was saying. What do you want to do? Do you want to talk about how you write a book, and then we'll talk about the characters a bit more?
Okay, then how do I write a book? It's different for every single one of them. Right.
Hey, Edward's here. Hi, Edward.
Okay, there we go. Then yes, we will do this. That's fine. Okay. Right. So how did I write Our Doris? So originally, Our Doris was going to have 13 monologues in it, and it doesn't have 13 monologues in it. It only has 10 because I realized that 3 of them were extraneous. Hello, AJ. This is fantastic. And so it was going to have 13. I cut 3 of them. And for this book in particular, I just wrote down a single sentence of what was going to happen in each monologue and then wrote it. And if I got stuck at any point, I would then write a line-by-line list of what was going to happen to get me to the point I needed to be at by the end of the story. Similarly, that is what happened for Indisputably Doris. For Doris Ahoy, it comes into the same thing as Royally Doris for Royally Doris and Doris Ahoy, where I was going to originally include them as one huge book. And can you imagine if Doris Ahoy was included in Royally Doris? Nobody would read it. I mean, nobody's reading it now. But
I would read
it. Doris Ahoy was 2 paragraphs of what was going to happen in each. Almost like if you were reading the TV guide and it was telling you that what was going to happen in that episode that week. And so I did that for that and for Royally Doris. But then in terms of Royally Doris, I also went through and did the whole line by line thing as well. And I could not tell you the number. Like, Our Doris was the simplest, easiest book to write in terms of planning and creation. Royally Doris is another beast entirely. And I have several different plans for that. I originally had a huge thing happen that doesn't happen in the book, and I ended up moving and changing the first part to make the end of what was the first chapter the end of the entire part, so I had to restructure the whole thing there. So that one was a mess. But Our Doris was simple. Our Doris was easy. Our Doris was fast.
Yeah, but you do have like a process, because I've spoken. If you there's a whole process that Charlie said about, or you told me before, that there's like when you're writing that you want to get. I'll let you go. You go for it. Talk about.
Well, no, you say it so that I can see whether I'm remembering the same thing.
You get to a certain amount of words. You're trying to get to, and then you get to that point.
I have to get to 30,000 words.
Yeah.
If I don't get to 30,000 words, I'm at risk of going back and rewriting everything and never actually finishing the book or getting to that point. I have to get to 30,000 words, and once I get there, I'm like, okay, we can zoom through this book. But it can take me forever.
The first 15,000 especially.
Yeah.
At the crucial critical point. That's what I remember
it can take me forever to get to that point. It's like An Heir to Murder. I had 30,000 words written. Those 30,000 words were written from November to July. The final 30,000 words, which make up the rest of the book, were written in July into August. They were written over 3 weeks.
Yeah, because you said that's when
This is who I am.
you're motivated. Like, yeah.
I
It's
just,
like you're motivated.
I need to have that different mentality when it comes to writing, but I just, I do a lot of thinking and I do a lot of planning, because I hate editing. So even when I'm writing, I'm redrafting and rewriting. So
You said there's been so many books that you've like started and then scrapped, haven't you? Like
Alice Valentine, the first draft of An Heir to Murder, I think I wrote 3 chapters of that originally and then threw all that away. Even Doris, when I've written Doris, there have been pages where I've written, you could say 12 pages, and then gone back and read it all and been like, nope, none of that's correct. Get rid, throw them away, start again. And I'm handwriting it all, so no wonder I'm arthritic.
And no, Charlie gets bad hands as well, so it's like it's
old age, Charlie. That's my problem. Old age.
I'm with the cold at the moment. It makes it worse. Yeah. If you guys got any more questions, like you guys watching, do you wanna like? Is there any like? Because we've just like touched upon this bit about the writing. Have you got any more questions about Charlie's writing, and you want to know any little details? Otherwise, I can go back to my questions. I can go to my questions if you want, or do you want me to give it a minute? Give them a minute.
I don't.
I think I've said this to you before. I said.
Oh, wait. AJ has a question. Here we go. Oh, but I did just answer it. Do you write by hand or on a computer? And I tend to write by hand because I never used to. I've just found that over time, there's just something about the flow of writing that seems to come easier through writing by hand. However, when I set down to write those final 30,000 words of An Heir to Murder, and indeed it happened with Royally Doris as well, whenever I'm in the final throes and I can see the finish line and I've reached that frenetic point where I don't stop writing, like this has happened with Indisputably Doris, An Heir to Murder, and Royally Doris, where I've just been sat there for about 3 days at a time, spending the entire day at my computer, not even sleeping, because, well, I've been going to bed, just not sleeping. That's all happened on the computer because I can't write fast enough.
Yeah.
So then I do type.
Yeah. And Edward said handwriting and arthritis sounds awful. Yes.
And it is, but these are the things I'm willing to go through.
Massive. Bless poor Charlie. Shall we talk about? So Kelly submitted some questions. Kelly, who's watching, hello, Kelly. We might as well go ask Kelly's questions.
Yeah.
Kelly said, "Hi Charlie, I love the book. Thank you very much for saying about Charlie. That obviously not for me, for Charlie's book. You know what I mean? Thank you very much. Anyway,
you can thank them, Charlie.
I will thank them because you're my friend. I will thank them. I was wondering what inspired you to write Our Doris. So you can answer that question. There's a couple of questions.
I think we've covered that.
Yeah, and then do you know anyone similar to Doris or Harold? There you go. And also I would like to say, is there anyone similar to the antagonists? Because there is a story
several antagonists
that Charlie will talk about if you guys want to hear it.
So in terms of Doris, there is no one person that inspired Doris. However, certain aspects of Doris's character were inspired by my grandmother. Not the whole throwing and everything, just the painfully middle class bit, which she now completely denies. And Paul O'Grady had a documentary a few years ago where he said he was working class. And from that moment on, my nan decided she was working class. But it wasn't until Paul O'Grady said he was that she said she was.
I love that so much.
And when I go to events and I read from Doris, and this has gone on we're getting on for 9 to 10 years now of Doris, that they hear it and they hear behavior from her and they go, oh, I'm a bit like that. And so, I mean, my friend, the one I was saying about before, is certain that I'm actually Doris. But
I don't know, I guess you could say like little bits.
Yeah, that's
little bits.
That's what I hear from everyone, is that they all have a little bit of Doris in them. Oh,
Oh, hello.
no, that is fine, Ross.
We haven't even answered your question yet, so you're completely fine.
So it's fine, and you get to go back and you can watch this, and you can rewatch it at double speed.
Or if you want to, if you've got, we can go over anything you think you've missed. If there's anything that I'll answer your question. We'll answer. No, I won't answer your question. Charlie will answer your question. I'll ask the question. But if there's anything you want touched up, us to go back over. I'm not saying the words. Shut up. Touched upon. What I was going to say.
Yeah.
Just let us know if there's anything that, if you feel like you've missed anything that you want us. Charlie's happy to go back over anything that you want to know. So.
Yeah, I've been doing this for a while. AJ said that they write by hand as well and need that connection to the page, but do all of their editing on the computer.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I do too much editing when it happens.
Well, that's really lovely. Yeah. So do you? But so obviously you said. So do you know anyone similar to Harold as well? And then get on to
Harold. In terms of Harold, I can say that I think that there are a lot of older men that might be like Harold, and I've definitely met them over the years. But I couldn't say he was based on anyone in particular. And Janice Dooley is actually a very big caricature of somebody within my family, and I cannot share who they are because it will lead to aggro that I don't need in my life. But yes,
Janice Dooley is the antagonist. Obviously, you guys are watching. You probably have read the books, so you probably know this. But if anyone's watching in the future and you don't know, and you haven't read the books, yeah.
And Violet Grey. I don't know where Violet Grey came from, but yeah, I have definitely met a few Violet Greys, and I've definitely met a few Doug Greys in my time, but we don't really need to worry about Doug yet.
No, because we haven't really met Doug yet at the moment, so
so
apart from the scandal that we're hearing about, the potential scandal with
the scandal that
did it happen? Did it not happen? Will you find out? Who knows?
And I think was Alf. Alf wasn't inspired by anybody. He's just my generic ragamuffin character. Alf and Edith were originally in my radio play, and when it came to Harold needing a friend, I was like, "Oh, Alf will do."
I love Alf. Side note, I love Alf. Like Alf, and because Alf is like, especially as the books progress, you like get to see a little bit more from him. But yeah, he's like Alf is just amazing. Like,
yeah, I think that
I'll have to go back to my.
When I got to Indisputably Doris, which we should all be reading this month, when I got to that book, I knew that I wanted Alf and Edith to be a bit more present, and I wanted the friendship to be more of a focus, which is why Alf and Edith start turning up more in the next.
I feel like in the book as well, this is something I was going to kind of ask you about. Like, there's a bit I didn't write down the chapters, so I'm sure you might know it more than me. There's a bit where he obviously nearly gets arrested. Or he gets arrested. Yeah, nearly gets arrested, and it's like it's an EastEnders dun dun dun.
Yeah.
Was that like deliberate to kind of like?
I think you're talking about Secateurs.
Yes, that's it.
Yes. Well, actually, that was based on a scenario that did happen at the charity shop.
Ooh.
And yeah, where nobody actually wanted to admit that something had happened because,
Scandal. You guys.
The whole reason it ends on the cliffhanger is just because I couldn't figure out, as I was saying before, I couldn't figure out how to get to that scene. And so I was like, that's how that happens. I realized I kept trying to write it as Harold would arrive back at the house for that moment. And then I knew how a certain scene in Quinoa was going to end. And I was like, I can't have both ending the same way. and I knew which was more important to be seen in the story.
Yes.
So we had to cut one scene, and that ended up being the one that would have been seen in Secateurs, and have Errol turn up at the station for another character. So yes, then we have this from Edward. The class talk is great. Did you get any responses from agents/publishers before deciding to self-publish? No. I sometimes regret not trying this with agents. As I said earlier, I've had a few people say this was the most commercial out of stuff that I'd ever written. And that's in relation to stuff I had actually tried to get published before. But I was also, at the time, recognizing how writers just starting out weren't getting much when it came to publicizing. They weren't getting much help when it came to publicity. So they were having to do everything that I've done anyway. And now, when I went and did the crime author panel in November, I had a few writers there who just brought out their books, and they'd been traditionally published and were telling me they were thinking about self-publishing because they just felt like they hadn't got the support from their publishers because they were at the bottom of the barrel to them. So it's like, well, I can avoid that. Then Roz says, I love Alf too, but I wonder how he got to marry Edith.
There you go.
Spoilers. That's all I'll say to that one. I will say that I think you get a better impression in Indisputably Doris and Royally Doris about how Alf and Edith came to get together. And in a certain book that I may or may not be writing, we actually examine how Alf and Edith have come to be the people they are. So I can't be too revelatory with that one.
There you go then.
Hello, Richard. Hello, Kelly.
And again.
Hello, Richard.
That's just them talking to each other. We don't need
No,
to.
I know. I just want them to know that I can see them.
They want them see them. You can see them talking to each other. Okay.
Yes.
I feel like it's like the naughty Scott, the naughty kid, the teacher, like highlighting the kids talking at the back of the class. You guys feel free to talk.
I would be that mean. I would be that mean.
No, you're not. I won't let you.
I would be that mean.
No.
If I was a school teacher, yeah, it's a good job I wasn't.
No, Charlie's not that mean. Yeah, but you guys can feel free to talk, and we're not going to highlight all your comments. Don't worry.
Charlie's told me off now.
Because I'd be like, if someone, when people, like, obviously, everyone who does lives, you do it how you want to do it. But if anyone like highlights comments, I'm in just talking to someone else, I'm like, oh no, don't do that to me.
Stop.
Yeah, seriously, I'm like the kid at the back of the class, like wanting to like.
Oh, come on then. What other questions can you throw at me, Chuck?
I'm gonna try. I don't know what to do questions or to talk about a bit more about the characters. Does anyone want to say? Because if has anyone here read? I have not read Charlie's crime book, which is oh my god, I forgot.
It's called An Heir to Murder.
Heir to Murder. I'm the worst best friend ever. Charlie's written a crime book called An Heir to Murder, which I'm going to read as soon as we finished all of our read along. We're gonna, and like if anyone else wants to join in with me reading, like and talk, we can all do an extra little thing. But yeah, one of the characters. So I was reading the end. Charlie already told me that Alice Valentine, who is the lead protagonist of An Heir to Murder, appears in this book. And I was so the whole book I was looking out for it. Bear in mind, when I was reading this, I had COVID. I was very poorly. But yeah, so I as soon as I spotted Alice appears. I guess if you guys, I don't know, because I don't. Again, you tell me if you've read the book, if you've read An Heir to Murder. But yeah, Alice appears in the what's the name of the chapter book? Quinoa. So yes, Alice appears in Quinoa, and yeah, and so as soon as I saw her appear, I was like, Charlie, I spotted Alice. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's part of the whole shared world thing. And originally, Alice her first book, I had plans to come out directly after Our Doris, because I had it in my head that I could write all of these books incredibly quickly. So a book that's not going to happen now, but I had plans for when I first started doing Our Doris, is a book about the Bulge Busters meeting. And so some of the characters that you met in that chapter would have been characters in this spin-off that's never going to happen now. And the same sort of thing happens in Indisputably Doris as well. You meet some characters that should be main characters in a book further down the line. Similarly, in An Heir to Murder, there are characters that have appeared in other books that I've written in the past that are never going to see the light of day. So it's just,
you never know.
No, I can say never because I killed them, Charlie.
Oh yeah, in that case. Unless we go back to the ghosts in the supermarket.
Yeah, unless you decide to completely mess up Partridge Muse. It's just back then I really liked the idea of having this huge town full of characters, and I came up with the idea of Partridge Muse when I was 12, and so I just kept. Oh yeah, I forgot that Roz had read An Heir to Murder.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the last it's quinoa. Yeah. So if you it's in quinoa.
To be fair, Alice in Our Doris is something of she isn't the character that we get to see in An Heir to Murder. She's completely different in An Heir to Murder. And that's again because I hadn't really developed her as a character, and I also couldn't figure out how to get her across.
And also, you could just say that she's younger. Like, she's younger. So, obviously, as you grow older...
She's not much younger, because An Heir to Murder is set between Our Doris and Indisputably Doris.
Oh, there you go.
And it's incredibly telling, because if anybody's read An Heir to Murder, there is an Easter egg for An Heir to Murder at the end of Indisputably Doris.
There's an Easter egg for An Heir to Murder?
At the end of Indisputably Doris.
I'm going to say, I'm going to be looking out for that.
There is, if you get to Royally Doris, then there are Easter eggs for another book that is currently being written, probably, I can't confirm, and another book. So they're all connected, and they're all...
You guys like that? You guys watching? Do you guys love the because I personally do. I love.
It just mean that they're never so explicit that they're going to hamper the story in any way. But I just like doing that.
I love it because it's like my favorite shows. You can spot they have Easter eggs in them, and then obviously Doctor Who being one of the major things, obviously. But so I love spotting reading books or things that as you read the books again and again, you get more out of it. Like you said. Books you've read and you've loved, and series and shows you've read and you've loved, you find more. So
if everything works out, then when we get to the 5th cozy crime novel, all of these things will play off. So you only have to have read 10 books.
That's nothing. It's fine.
Booktubers,
that's nothing. Booktubers, 10 books is a week's worth of books.
You don't have to have read any of them. But if you have read all 10, then you'll be like, oh, I remember somebody mentioning this. And yeah, it's something I have fun doing.
Yeah, I just think it's brilliant. I loved it. And when I got to the end of Our Doris, like I said, I was literally, even though I was really poorly, I literally was beside myself because I messaged Charlie, I messaged Emily, my poor sister, and I was like, Emily Novel Novels, if you want to check out her channel. Because I was like, Alice, it's Alice, and Emily was like, yeah, I know that,
yeah. For reasons we can't mention, Magdalena being there as well. Then Richard Boo Gladstone said, I started reading Our Doris. It should come with a disclaimer. You need to read it with an accent. Haven't finished yet, but loving it. So very kind. And yes, I do forget how northern I am at times.
And do you want to talk about a bit about? Oh, you can highlight some more comments. And
I was just going to show Callie's comment. Excited to see what to come with indisputably, Doris. I showed Roz's, and then this was about the interconnectivity of the books.
That's really good. Thank you. Thank you, Ellie. Yeah. So, do you want to talk about being a Northern writer and your feelings around that? And
well, I didn't.
Yeah, you don't have to talk about that.
No, I can talk about it, but the only word I can think to use is arsey. Is that I'm incredibly arsey, and I was just like, I'm fed up of all these books set in London. I'm fed. I want to set this book in the north, and I am going to make it regional. And this has been a thing, like when Dane has edited stuff, or when other people have edited the Doris books, they've all brought up the fact that, don't you think this is a bit regional? It's not going to have much reach across the pond. Now, as we know, certain people have actually gone and researched it, and I still can't believe it when they've come across to certain aspects of the book they haven't understood, then going on Google and finding out what I meant. Sometimes it was a concerted effort to be northern, and it just came naturally. And sometimes I didn't even realise that things that I was saying weren't known outside of the north.
I love that about the Doris books. Me personally, obviously, you can say I'm biased, whatever you like. I don't care. I love the little twangs, the little northern nooks, and I just think they're just so wonderful, and I just think they bring a lovely feel to the books. And obviously, they're part of your personality. Like, obviously, if you read these books and if you watch Charlie's channel, you obviously love Charlie. The books have got just an extension of that, and even more so. And yeah, I think, why not make them northern? Why not? Why wouldn't you? That's my personal thoughts on that.
I think that there was also like a big thing when you're having an upper class character or a middle class character, is that someone's going to want to set it in somewhere down south because that's where they associate that sort of class from.
Yeah.
Then Callie said, I love the way that Doris and Theo are so alike, Charlie.
Oh, yeah. I was going to talk about Theo's relationship with Doris. That's a really good shout.
Do you want me to leave that and then come back to it, or shall I just
talk about it now? Let's talk about it now. Talk about
this one was, again, just based on the close relationship I had with my grandmother and how we were known at the time for being quite similar. Indeed, when I started working in the town that she lives in, I was staying at her house, and I ended up deciding to move back home and get ferried in every day by my dad, because me and my grandmother, who love each other dearly, did nothing but argue with each other the entire time that I was living there and going to work and what have you. And it was simply because we are so alike.
I love that so much, though.
Even down to the things that we eat. Like, when it comes to, like, I'm off sugar now, but when it came to desserts and things, we would always choose something that was a bit more tart than something exceptionally sweet. We can't cope with things that are too sweet. I'm a northerner, so that reading it with the intended accent makes it fun and good. Sorry to talk so much, but as someone who's not northern or from England, I love that it's regional.
Thank you.
I'm glad of that too.
That's brilliant. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So, and Kelly's from the US, so she's a good example of like
the transatlantic appeal.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this book sold in South Africa as well.
There you go, then.
Yeah. They were one of the first book groups that actually invited me to talk to them.
That's so lovely.
What was Roz's question?
Oh, I didn't see, didn't he?
No, not on here.
On here. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Sorry. Yes. I just thought we ought to get to it.
No, I have got that. I've got that screenshotted. This book is very funny, but did you ever worry about offending anybody?
I remember that question now, and the answer is no.
If you know Charlie at all, you'd know the answer to this from the off.
It is something that has been said about me, and could possibly be true, is that firstly, I said to somebody years ago that if I haven't said something to insult them, then I probably don't like them. And she went to me, no, I probably don't know them, sorry. And she said, oh no, I did say I probably don't like them. And she said, you haven't insulted me. And I said, well, I don't know you. But in terms of Doris, and in terms of any form of writing, if I'm writing, yes, yes, Ros, you're incredibly correct, shameless. But really, it comes down to the fact that in terms of writing Doris, and in terms of the way she speaks to people, it's more about that isn't me as Charlie saying these things. That is Doris saying these things.
That's
and
important
so
to have
if
that
it's true to the character, then it's going to be in there. It's like, I remember years ago somebody asked me about Doris's politics, and I had to tell them how Doris would actually vote about certain things, and they got upset. And then minutes later, like, no, it makes sense. They realized, yes, that it's a character. These are character-based decisions, not authorial-based decisions. There is a disconnect there. There is one joke in Bread, the first one, that I don't worry about offending people, but I would not necessarily use a specific name nowadays, or if I was going to use a specific name, I wouldn't publish it.
I think I'm going to reread that chapter just to read. I
Um,
like.
And I can say that, like, occasionally I have. One of the reasons that I don't get worried about offending people is because people have got upset with me over my books over the stupidest of things. Somebody once got upset because I wasn't inspired by Coronation Street. And she had decided in her head that a certain character was very much inspired by this character from Coronation Street that had been on the show in the 1970s, 20 years before I was born. I'd never seen them.
I don't know who you're talking about.
I don't know. I can't remember who it was. I just know that it was in the 1970s. They got upset that I didn't agree that this character was based on this person that I didn't know.
Yeah.
I once offended a vegan with what I wrote in Bread when I shared that in Stockport, and I have offended other people, and I'm just like, well, there's no winning. You know, I could say one thing and upset one person, and then it would upset the other. They all have differing opinions, so in the end, I just have to write it as true to it as can be.
I was going to say, yeah, who you're writing it for, like, sort of thing.
And there's only one that's ever got me that was in a review where it said about something I'd written to do with blonde people, and I went back, and sometimes I have to say, when somebody's getting offended and somebody is saying they're offended or feeling a certain type of way about something that's been written, they need to look as to whether it's on them. Because the only thing that I had said about blonde people in this book was that the character was blonde. I hadn't used it as an intimation as to their character. I hadn't used it in a way to be insulting. I'd literally used it to show how a certain character didn't know who a person was. All she knew about them was that they were blonde. And this person brought in all this history of how people had insulted blonde people in the past and decided that was what I was doing.
Again, readers bring their own baggage to books, so this is
So
what you
in that, I was just like, I am very much of the you can't win mentality, so just do what you're going to do.
Yeah. AJ's got a lovely question for you, Charlie.
We do meet. Oh gosh, I pressed something and I can't see anybody. There we go. Okay. Did you get any inspiration from any shows like Keeping Up Appearances? Yes. However, the Keeping Up Appearances one is one that I didn't even realise until the book had been out until I was about to publish the book. And I'd been performing it then for months, even years for some of the monologues, because I treated Doris coming out like a musician treats their first single.
Yeah.
I toured Bread Round all the open mic nights, and then I turn up. I toured around the first 5 monologues out of Our Doris before the book was even published, or talked about being published. I think that's why I had so many sales in my first year. And if I was better with cash, I'd still have all that money. But somebody wanted to buy tons and tons of books and go on holiday. But yeah, I didn't realize that I was inspired by Keeping Up Appearances until quite a fair bit in, and then I was watching it. I was like, oh my goodness! And that is afterwards where I said, as I said earlier, like Hyacinth Bouquet, but with a tendency to throw table lamps, because Doris is just a little bit more northern, a little bit more aggressive, and whereas Hyacinth Bouquet manages to keep herself refined at all times, Doris can't necessarily do that. Throughout the entirety of the book, it's very much a case of she's slowly teetering towards
There's a whole section in the. Also, I've taken note. I'll have to go back because I've got 2 different sections.
She's a true northerner.
She gets arrested, doesn't she? Because of her throwing something.
This is true.
So yeah, I'll try to find my notes. Sorry. Yeah, because it's an iron, isn't it? She throws an iron. Like.
She throws something. She throws a lot.
She throws it specifically. I'm talking about when she throws an iron at Janice Dooley of Little Street, and that's when I'm sure that's what she gets. Is that what she gets arrested for?
It doesn't throw an iron.
What does she throw at her? I thought it was an iron.
She throws a set of scales at the Bulge Busters meeting.
Oh my days!
And catapults her into a trestle table full of low-fat cereal bars.
Thank you. In my head, I got it wrong, so sorry.
No, it's fine. It's just the reason that it's in my head so much at the moment is when I read that scene, all I could think about after reading that, having written this book myself, was I should adapt this for television.
Yeah.
I just love to see, like, forget the rest of the book. It sounds awful. I would just love to see that scene created.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah, I agree.
That one.
Yeah, at the Bulge Busters session. Yes.
Because
I think AJ said something. AJ said, "Yeah, I love Hyacinth.
She's my spirit animal."
100%. I watched that show so much growing up, and I used to think like my nan was like her quite a lot.
Not mine. I think everybody's nan was like Hyacinth.
Especially like.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Has anyone else got anything more they want to say before we move on to some other things, like other like questions or anything?
Yeah,
it's time to interact with you guys. I'll go back to my author questions. I'll try to see.
If you do hear my mother in the background, I do apologise, everybody.
So I've got one that I can say. Like, what would you say is your strength as a writer?
Oh goodness me!
Sorry, Charlie.
Well, I was talking to Charlie about this morning, so I will say what my uni tutor said to me, and something that has followed me ever since is my Tinniswood ear for language. I think in terms of my writing, I can always tell when I've gone wrong quite quickly because there is a rhythm to the way that I write. Luckily, with writing comedy, there's still a rhythm to the way that there's even more of a rhythm then. And I can usually see straight away when something's not right. And Matson Taylor, I know I brought this up a lot, did an interview last year and said that sometimes he'll write a line and put in brackets 3-syllable word here. And I have been known to do something similar, except I can't put 3-syllable word here and move on. I have to go and research like dessert products of the 1970s to make a joke. I once spent an entire morning watching adverts from the 1950s just so that I could make a joke about Butlins.
You're so thorough. This is one of the things I love about Charlie. Yeah. Charlie will fact-check everything. Like, because there was a book we were reading, like there's a women's prize book that was on the, like, can we say about it?
Are we talking about Careless?
We're talking about Careless.
No, Careless. Oh my
yeah.
goodness.
I like this book. I follow the author on Instagram. I really enjoy this book.
Charlie needs to get that disclaimer out there because there were so many things that were wrong in this book. I'm not talking about the writing. I'm talking about
The facts.
The facts. So she said. So this is set in the 90s, and it's 1999, and the character at one point starts thinking about her grandmother in 1989. Her grandmother in 1989, and she starts thinking about her grandmother in 1989 watching Spring Watch, a show that didn't start till 2004.
This Charlie messaged me as soon as Charlie had read this.
I was livid.
So this goes to show, like, and in Charlie's books, Charlie will fact check everything. So if you're reading a Charlie book, you will know that if something's happened at a certain time, this is 100%.
On the second page of Our Doris, I made a joke. Let me find it. She wouldn't mind had she not just purchased several inexpensive items from Laura Ashley and he'd used them as hand towels when they were guest towels. Just a sentence. Just a sentence. I spent an entire afternoon searching for catalogues from Laura Ashley in the 1960s just so that I could make that one joke.
I love that so much. Yeah, Charlie will fact check everything, like seriously.
Like, even in Joanna Cannon's The Trouble with Goats and Sheep, a favourite book of mine, she talks about Emmerdale Farm, and she has it being on 7 years before it aired on the telly.
I would say, going back to making it loop back round again, like I said about your strengths, I think one of your strengths is your attention to detail. And
everything else, the language and stuff is a bit poor, but I love it. The facts.
Yeah. If you're reading a Doris book, if there's a fact in there, it's solid. I think Richard's got something.
Yeah. I'm a newbie to your channel. I think your sense of humour is so imprinted in Our Doris. Do you have a dark side with your imagination? Can I let Charlie answer that question?
I think that you're quite perceptive if you've picked this up. No, Charlie is not. All right, I'm not gonna say anything back. No, Charlie no, I think it's like anything. Like, you've got a great sense. It's part of your humour.
I have an incredibly dark sense of humour. Yes, and
I think we kind of bond over that.
None more so than in my poetry. Hopefully, the poetry collection will arrive at some point, and you will get to see just how dark my imagination can get, and how dark the humour can get. Because I didn't realise how dark it could get until certain people in the audience were getting uncomfortable, and I found something incredibly hilarious.
That is classic cute. That is classic.
Callie, the facts bother me too, Charlie. I can't get past them. I'm glad. Great research. Love that. But I have to do it whilst I'm writing. I can't research beforehand and go in and do it. Do you admit to any writing weaknesses? Yes. Description. I don't know why. I don't know what's happened to me over time. But I find writing description one of the most tedious, difficult things to do. I used to get, people would comment on the fact that they felt as though they were inhabiting the scene and they could see it. But I don't know whether it happened when I went to uni and we got told you don't need to say what the chair looked like. You don't need to say it was linen or what fabric it was. You can just say it's a chair. Readers aren't going to focus on that bit. And there's just part of me that just... I've even been known to write all of the dialogue for a scene because I can get the conversations right. Where's she going? Is she going downstairs? Is she going to bed?
Sorry.
I could hear the mother.
We can't hear anything.
I've even been known to write an entire scene's worth of dialogue and then go back in afterwards and add description and add what the characters are doing, because it just... Yeah, that's what the weakness is the description, is the sometimes be getting from point A to point B.
I feel like with the Doris books, though, it doesn't impact that. I don't feel like that impacts it. It's not that
it does impact it, because I noticed on my reading of Our Doris that certain jokes come along that just do not make sense in terms of the that the house changes shape a few times in the first book is all I can say. The house changes shape.
Watch out for that one then. No. Yeah. Yes. Also, I feel like I'm losing my train of thought. I'm getting a bit tired now. You guys are going to have to bear with me and have a look, because we've already been like talking.
Yeah, it's only been an hour and 20 minutes. We can do this.
No, we're fine. Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to look through the questions and see what there's anything that we would want to talk about.
Everything.
Talk about everything. Do you want to say about what do you think makes a good story?
Oh, that's a difficult one.
Sorry.
Really, for me, and I used to say that,
maybe you could answer this in twofold, because obviously, as a reader and a writer,
I used to say that I didn't like books without plot. Yeah. And then I read some books that didn't have plot, and I got through them, and I like them. So what I've realized is that for me to be able to get through a book, I need a strong narratorial voice. I've read books with sometimes not the nicest possible characters in, but they've been well constructed, and the narratorial voice has been there, and I've ended up really enjoying it. Charlie's heard nothing but me praising Emotionally Weird by Kate Atkinson for the last week.
I want to read that one now.
And that is a book that is not going to work for so many people. It's a little bit out there sometimes. It uses a variety of things, and sometimes the character will get fed up, and the mother will interject into the story, telling the narrator she doesn't like something, and so then the story will change. And I like that sort of thing. I like playfulness with it. I like language. So yeah.
Your favorite kind of books in terms of catnip of you reading, yeah, the language is massively. I know, like when we're reading, especially long lists together.
Yeah.
That is definitely, if there's something that plays with language, I'm always like, oh, Charlie, this is.
Yeah. If you're playing with language in a way, I'll probably enjoy it. And that's one of the reasons that I've switched to listening to Douglas Adams books on audiobook, and I was right to do that, because I said when I read the first book,
on audio.
I said when I read the first book, I think it would work better as an audiobook. So I listened to the second one as an audiobook, and I was right. Sometimes you need somebody who's going to be able to read the rhythm correctly. So,
you guys can answer that question too, about what you think makes a good story, because we'd love to hear your thoughts on that too.
I'll say hello to Thomas.
Oh, hi, Thomas.
Thank you for saying you enjoyed the first Doris book, but then go to Roz with, I did wonder if the gardening detail was fact-checked. All I will say about the gardening detail in there is that I mentioned about Harold's father-in-law gave him a copy of the Reader's Digest Gardening Year, and I did go to the Reader's Digest Gardening Year to fact check. And one of the reasons that you don't hear any specific flowers mentioned in the final chapter, you just get a list of colours, is because I couldn't figure out that one, and I was taking things easy on myself.
You didn't want to write anything that wasn't correct, because like we said.
Yeah, so that's why we ended up with colours there. But yeah.
Is there any hugely popular, like back into the things that you love and you don't like? Is there any hugely popular novel that has left you thinking that you could write it better?
Oh, We did that. Yes. I'm not sure.
We've touched on it before, but
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I want to say it out loud though.
But if you've already said about it in our first video, they can go and try and they can if you don't want to say it.
Did I say it? Did I say it, or did we
I can't remember. I feel like I don't know. You guys can answer that question anyway. You guys watching can answer. Is there any? No, you don't write books, but you can say that if you feel like I don't know.
Okay, so yes, there's definitely a book there, but I think that I've also said at the time when I was originally asked that question as well that I do this when I'm reading books anyway.
Yeah, you do.
Sometimes I'll read a book and I'll be thinking, I wouldn't have done this. I would have had it go this way. And that's what can sometimes hinder my reading experience. And I do know that I need to check myself sometimes, because there are times when I'll be going, well, I'd have done it this way.
Because I was going to say that's like a question that they might want to know. Like, how does being a writer affect your reading process? Like being a reader, how does being a writer affect you as a reader?
Originally, when I left uni, because we had to read everything as a writer and wonder over why writers had done certain things craft-wise, it really ruined things for me, and I didn't read a book for quite a while, and then I just stuck to reading books that I would see as palate cleansers, really, and I still do today. Things that I'm only going to read once and I can enjoy them, but I'm never going to go back to. And I did that a lot because I had to reach a point where I was no longer reading everything and being critical of it. And nowadays, I think that, like with Emotionally Weird last week, which I did read as a writer, but I also ended up reading as for enjoyment in the end, that helped me figure out a problem that I was having with my own writing. And sometimes I have to do that too. I have to go to books of the same genre to see how the other writers have done it, to inform the way that I'm going to do it as well, and see the things that I think, well, this worked well. I didn't necessarily like this thing, so I won't do that when I do it.
That's fair. So it sort of teaches you how you're gonna. Right.
So Richard said that their book purchases tend to be bought after I've heard the writer talking about them. If the writer is engaging, I work on the basis that the book will be engaging.
That's a good point.
Certainly. And Thomas says, was the book with the shares in something you think would be a good idea in reality? So Thomas is referencing a spoiler from Secateurs, and I do know that you can purchase fake copies of books to keep things in, and I don't think that it was a good idea in reality. I don't think you should be hiding Secateurs in copies of the Collins English Dictionary. Quite frankly, the pages in a Collins English Dictionary are rather thin, but for the purposes of the story, we needed them to be hidden somewhere.
People do hide things in dictionaries. Like if you're watching like a movie, like a murder mystery, or like there's like always the bigger book on the shelf that you know, like crime fiction. It's always
sometimes I have if I'm donating a book to the charity shop, I always have to check them first for bookmarks and also for cash.
There you go. What's do you want to tell people the weirdest things you found, like in books? Like, I don't know.
No, I haven't really found many weird things in books at all. Shopping lists and the like, train tickets. No, I do have this habit for just grabbing anything that I've got nearby and using it as a bookmark, even though I have plenty of bookmarks to be going on with. And sometimes that's cash. Sometimes I've searched my entire house looking for my phone and then realized it's actually in the book that I've been reading.
No, I never use my phone as a bookmark. Never.
It just makes a really good bookmark. Let me show you.
No, don't.
Well, imagine that just set on the table like that. Nobody's going to pick it up.
No, because my family would just accidentally knock it, and then that'd be it. No, Thomas, you don't need to worry, darling.
Like, you don't need to apologize for the spoiler. It's fine.
No, I think people that have watched this anyway know we're way into the book, talking about spoilers about books. So seriously, you're all right, mate. I'll have a look at my phone. Here we go. Do you want to talk about I don't know. I was going to say about your because obviously your family is like your dad's the farming side of things, but that doesn't really occur to Doris. I'm not going to talk about that.
Yeah, okay.
Right, I'm so tired. You'll have to bear with me. If you could be mentored by a famous author, who would it be and why? What to say about that? It's nothing to do with the Doris.
Unfortunately, the only person that I would want to be mentored by is dead. And also, I'm not sure that I'd want to be mentored by a writer. As I mentioned in the beginning, I am the secretary of the Macclesfield Creative Writing Group and basically kind of the entire committee at the moment because we're all over the United Kingdom. But I found that having a group of writers around is much more beneficial than just having like one mentor. And also, it's kind of like I think that even though I'm releasing my books independently, I have now established relationships with traditionally published writers, and we have done events together and that sort of thing. So I don't know, the idea of kind of holding somebody aloft to a certain prestige. I had a really not awful author experience, but I went to see a very big author about 10 years ago, and when I saw
asking if I want tea, I'm listening to you.
Okay, and I saw this very famous author, and I was there with all my friends. The theatre we were in was packed, and I had this awful realization. And I was like, why are we idolizing this person? They've just been very successful at what we want to do. And in that moment, I ruined everything for myself.
Oh, bless you.
I brought like every single writer I'd known down to my level. I was like, with a little bit of money, I could have been them.
Yeah.
Candy nuts with all of Merry Christmas, but I kind of humanized them then.
Like that's fair, because like no one's we've got a weird perception in I think in our world where we kind of feel like just because someone's got a certain stature or a certain amount of wealth that they're better than us. Well, actually, that's not true. So
therefore, no, I don't want any writing mentors. I'm very good at mentoring myself.
Very, very good. You talked a bit about
I was just saying that the weirdest thing that Thomas found in a book was a single slice of cheese.
Oh, really? Assuming it was used as a temporary bookmark, they were paying less temporary. Oh, wow. Oh, that's kind of gross. That must have been a bit horrifying. I would have been like, oh, I feel finding food. So you said a bit about events and things. Do you want to talk a bit more about like I don't know, how like promoting your books and like things that you've done recently, like in terms of
So nothing's really been happening recently. It's been very difficult since everything that went on in 2020 into 2021 and is still going on really today because I didn't have events for 2 years, so nobody really knew about nobody really knew about An Heir to Murder, and so I was when eventually libraries were reopening, I was doing events for that and also trying to book events for Our Doris. But there are also 2 years worth of traditionally published writers and people a bit higher up the food chain than me who were getting priority for these events. But when I brought Our Doris out, I was having great success with my events that took me across the north of England. And as I talk about often, I got discovered by a South African book club, and they got in touch with me and asked whether I would. They were going to read the book, and would I go and chat to them on Facebook? So that was something that happened, and yeah. So just like the first 2 years, like I talk about often, like after I wrote Doris, because of how successful that book was, I kind of fell into a bit of a depression because I was like, oh my goodness, how am I ever going to match this success? And as I said earlier, if I'd been better at saving, then I would have had a fantastic year with Our Doris, because everywhere I went, I was selling multiple copies, and I was getting invited to go and do things that I shouldn't have been invited to. I made them because I was the Christmas entertainment for a WI one year, and the first year I turned up full of cold, but they were paying me 60 quid to be there for an hour.
Wow, how cool is that?
So Doris ended up being a Liverpudlian that night because I couldn't do any other voice. But
Yeah.
nobody was listening to me because what they wanted was somebody to come and sing Christmas songs to them that they didn't have to pay any attention to. So I didn't sell a single book. And also the children's awards show that I got invited to talk to kids about how to write, and I'm there writing books for adults, but I still sold a copy to the kids there because they liked the fact that what I talked about.
Yeah, you're an author and you're cool. Like,
yeah, I still don't understand why they invited an erotica writer, but that's a story for another day.
I remember that. Yeah. I remember that story.
Now, Rosie's question. Tell us the dead one you almost chose.
I know this.
I don't quite get it.
Victoria Wood.
Oh, yes, Victoria Wood. Sorry, I see. Yes, I forgot what I talked about. Yes, Victoria Wood.
Right.
Yeah.
You're both tired. It's fine.
If I wanted to get mentored by anybody, it would have been Victoria Wood. Indeed, there was part of me that once toyed with the idea of actually sending her a copy of Our Doris. There wouldn't have been any point in doing that, though, because she died the year after I brought that book out.
Aww.
Maybe she did read it. She'd heard about my adoration of her and decided she'd read it, and that's what killed her off.
No, that's not true. Okay, my thing. Right.
I'm fidgeting because my father's bed is incredibly uncomfortable.
My bed's comfortable, but anyway, I'm not going to complain. All right, here we go. Have you ever considered writing under a pseudonym? Why or why not?
No, and simply because it never occurred to me.
Why do you think authors write under pseudonyms? This is other than I guess it's a kind of an obvious thing, maybe, but I don't know. You can talk about it.
Well, sometimes it can be because they are going to be writing in a different genre.
Yeah, test the waters.
Sometimes, yes, it can be that. That first ever event I went to where I showed up with a pile of papers and no books, I keep getting taken to events where there's an erotica writer. There was a writer of erotica there who wore a really bad blonde wig and these glasses that weren't prescription, but she was just trying to go incognito. And she wrote under a pseudonym because she was writing erotica and because she had a son who was 11 years old. And she worried that if she wrote them under her own name, that he would have the mick taken out of him at school. Recently discovered, she does now write under her actual name. She's got rid of the wig, and now she's writing historical fiction.
Oh, good for her.
Fewer whips and chains.
What do the word writer's block mean to you? This is an interesting thing to talk about, actually. How do you deal with it when you are feeling like that? Do you lean into it or?
I don't lean into it. I have experienced it in the past, and I've seen this whole thing where people say plumbers don't get plumber's block, but that's an entirely different thing. It's this is a creative enterprise, and sometimes the words just aren't forthcoming. But at the moment, I am working on tons of different projects. So if something's not working with one, I have gone over to the other, worked on that for a bit, and it's at the moment very much what do I feel like writing today? Which character is here drawing my attention? Which is almost kind of fun. It's a bit of make-believe. It's like having a multiple personality disorder. I'm just like, who am I going to be today? So yeah, at the moment, I haven't experienced writer's block in a while. Touch wood, because granted, I've said that now and I won't write for 50 years. Yeah. But I do think that the only way to get through that is to write through it. And I have said in the past that you just have to start writing. And you have to write the most terrible thing that you have written. And eventually you'll find your way into it. That's just as if by magic.
Your husband's amazing. Thank you, Rich.
So yeah, so it's just a case of just writing your way into it, and I've done that many times with Doris, written pages knowing that what I'm writing is going to get cut out, but I just have to find the flow again.
I'm just going to put it down because otherwise it's a bit hot. I just have to give it a hot minute. So is that what you would advise, like you said, in terms of other writers leaning in, like
just write through it.
Yeah, write through it. Keep writing, even if it's anything else, even if it's something.
If you're worried about it being part of your book, then yeah, just try a writing sprint. Just like you can find tons of them online, or get a friend to send you text a friend and say, what's the first word that comes into your head, and then just write about whatever they send you. I
love that. I think that's a really good tip. I think that's brilliant. Yeah. Are there any it says, this is a question that I've got here. Are there any therapeutic benefits to modeling a character after someone you know?
Oh.
And necessarily, would that be something
like I say, I've never knowingly written somebody based on someone that I know, although I've taken aspects from people, and there is an entire story in Indisputably Doris that actually happened to my younger brother. But I wouldn't say there is a therapeutic aspect. That's all I can say. Like, there's something that we'll talk about when we talk about Royally Doris to do with maybe a therapeutic aspect of writing, but that didn't leave me feeling like I'd gone through therapy. That left me feeling like I'd gone through the bloody wars. So,
Charlie's book, I know like some of you that like put like Royally Doris. I know that you guys are all at the beginnings of the books, but Royally Doris is my favorite. So like you don't have to, but I'm telling you have to actually. Because we will talk about Royally Doris in the future. We're going to have a whole separate live for Royally Doris. But it's my favorite because like Charlie wrote, like, there's so many reasons I love it for loads of different reasons.
I can just remember I can remember when I wrote the portion that I'm talking about in Royally Doris, and I can remember the concern from people because there was just no let up from that, and sometimes that can happen with writing. Like I remember I was trying to write a short story once for an anthology, and they'd chosen to talk about something from childhood, and I was like, no. It put me into sadness for 2 weeks. I was just like, nah, I ain't about this. So no, there's nothing therapeutic about writing. It just draws back terrible memories, and you end up retiring into books for a fortnight.
But what I'm referencing specifically, which if you carry on reading the books, is there's a section about grief. That's all I will say. How Charlie writes about grief, like it's not like super heavy, so it's I feel like you dealt with it so beautifully that it's still in tone with the story of it's still in tone. I'm going to keeping. So it's still in keeping
with the tone. Yeah,
it's still in keeping with the tone. So you will still enjoy I want you to read it, please. Like, carry on with the series.
I want you to read it simply to make everything I went through worth it.
Royally Doris was amazing. Like, it's my favorite of the four.
I love you to buy it just so that I can earn back the money I spent on it.
Yeah. But no, it's my favorite of the four. So obviously we're going to get to this as we like. Yeah,
we'll talk about that one in April.
It is amazing, and genuinely, I was like. Yeah, I was like sobbing. I actually was crying. So
yeah, I've still got a count going on with that.
Yeah, I don't do that.
I've got a count of criers going on with that. At the moment, it's 4 out of 5. Yeah.
So what's the most difficult part of your writing process? Are we going to go to half past? Are we going? Sorry, I was just waiting.
Yeah, let's try that. The most difficult part of my writing process. Is the editing, because I hate it. Yeah. I hate it with a passion. There is not a single part of me that likes editing. It's why I do it as I go along. It's why when I put a book in a drawer, it can sometimes stay there longer than a month because I'm just not ready to go back to it. And it's one of the reasons that I am glad that I also hire editors to look at the books too, because I hate it.
That's fair enough. I think Kelly's just got a very nice little comment.
I think I tapped it. Why didn't it appear? There we go.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad that you're going to read it.
I'm so glad that you're joining in and like reading the books with us so we can talk to you guys about it. So yeah, have you guys got any more comments or any questions about anything we've spoke about so far? You can join in if you like. It's very weird. Doing these lives are very weird, especially when we're supremely tired as we are, but we're doing it well and carrying on. We're British, as we say, like in the spirit of the Doris.
British and Northern.
Okay.
I
don't think there's a difference, to be clear.
I'm quite like, whether you've got any more questions, I don't know, but
I'm
quite looking forward to reading Indisputably Doris and Doris Ahoy, because it's awful, but with Indisputably Doris, when I brought that book out, my events went so poorly that I actually just cancelled events. And I didn't do anything for 2 years, which was terrible because then COVID hit and everyone had forgotten who I was. But because the first week of events was just terrible, I don't know what had happened, but so nobody really got to hear from Indisputably Doris, so I never read it as much as I read Our Doris. So I haven't looked at Indisputably Doris and read it since 2017.
I'm so excited to reread it. I've read it before, to be clear. I've read all of these. But, yeah, I'm so excited.
Doris Ahoy, I have read since, because when I was bringing out An Heir to Murder, I started doing events for Doris Ahoy and An Heir to Murder so that I could use one book to promote the next one. But that'll be 3 years since I read that as well, so it's going to be quite interesting.
I read Doris Ahoy literally because I remember I ordered it from you straight away, and I was like super excited. And I read it the summer it came out, September, it came out, didn't it?
No. Was it? It was June or September.
I don't know.
Did I finish it in June and bring it out in September? All I know is
I think it was September it came out, Charlie.
I know is that I was bringing that book out as a secret. I wasn't going to tell anybody that it existed. And then, because Waterstone said it could take 6 weeks to appear on its website.
Yeah.
And it appeared on their website in 2 days.
Wow.
And people were contacting me like, I can see this book's here. Is this you? And obviously it says Doris on it, so I can't really hide the fact that it's me. So I just had to reveal the fact that Doris Ahoy was coming out, and it was my summer holiday special.
And I love it. I love it so much. It's very, very small, but it's...
I can tell you something. It's not a spoiler, but in Doris Ahoy, we get two characters called Sheila and Ken, right? I have been calling one of my customers Ken for years because his wife's called Sheila.
Oh, so you just automatically...
His name's Derek.
His name's Derek.
And I only found out on Saturday.
Oh God, Charlie, I love that so much.
Because my manager actually knows them, and she went and she spoke to them, and she said his name is here to see such and such. Why have I been calling him Ken? And that's when it hit me. I just decided he was called Ken because of my own book. I rechristened him because of my own book.
I love that so much. Surely we've I'm sure all of us have accidentally named people wrong for various different reasons in our heads.
Not for that many years.
Have you said it to his face? Have you called him Ken to his face?
I don't know.
Oh my God, Charlie, have you?
I don't know for sure.
You might have done. And he's just silently not saying anything. And every time you do it, he's like...
I mean, to be fair, he calls me Charles. So
that's your published name. That's a bit different, Charlie. Someone being annoyed with
goodness. So yeah, so his name's not Ken.
And you are Charlie, and you are Charles.
Yeah, but I don't go by that one.
That's your published name. Anyway, Indisputably Doris. Doris Ahoy came out 24th of August 2019. So it was near to September. I'm going to claim it as a victory. There you go.
Oh yes, so that's what it says on Amazon, doesn't it?
Yes, that's what Amazon says. So
it was supposed to be the 1st of September.
Yeah.
But what happens is, because of the way Amazon works, as soon as now that you have to order author copies, it no longer comes out on the launch date.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So, whereas this actually did come out on its launch date of the 21st of June 2015, because I refused to be 23 and not have a book out.
I love that.
Doris Ahoy came out before its launch date, and An Heir to Murder came out before its launch date. And I'm still regretting the fact that I did not bring out An Heir to Murder on the 14th of February. I brought it out on the 12th of February because the character's called Alice Valentine. It should have been the 14th of February.
Yeah. I still can't wait to read that. Like, I can't wait to read An Heir to Murder this year, soon, imminently. Right, I'm going back to my questions. How are you guys watching? I'm just going to keep saying.
If you're still here, if you haven't all fled.
Doing what you read. Tell us what you're reading as well. Like, have a little gossip with us. What are you currently reading? I'm reading, you might have seen, I'm reading, what am I reading? Charlie, you might remember. Nicholas Nickleby and Demon Copperhead. Me and Charlie.
Yes.
Me and Charlie are buddy reading Demon Copperhead.
Yes.
So let us know what you guys are reading. We want to hear, because you guys are readers. So apart from reading, obviously, the Doris books, which obviously the most important thing.
I mean, why would you be doing anything else, really?
It's all about Doris and all about Harold. Oh, do you want to talk about their relationship, actually, and about like their bond and things like that? Because I always love talking. Like, I love talking. We spoke about this before, but
yeah, it's one that I think that throughout the 4 books, which is a trilogy of 4, I think that as a writer, I began to question why he'd stuck with her for so long. And I think that through the writing of the 4 books and through the reading of them, you begin to understand their relationship. And indeed, it was at the end of writing Our Doris that I got more of a sense as to who Doris had been when she was younger. And in Royally Doris, we learn her history. And that was because I knew her history then. And I felt like revealing it to the reader as well as to myself gave me this sense of, well, this is why she is who she is. This is why she has behaved the way that she has all these years, because she's needed the control over everything. And I think that Errol just went with it because, as we say at the end of every single book, Harold has to tell Doris he loves her in some way.
I love that, because they've got such a, you can see the bond, even like obviously rereading this book, like there was still some lovely little tender moments in this book with them together, and like how he treats her and how she treats him, and there is so much tenderness within these pages. Like, I'm sure you guys are reading, watching and talking to us, like can you guys see that as well? Because I just love those elements of yeah.
I knew that I wanted them to have been a couple that had been together since their teenage years.
Yeah, which I love.
And, I don't know. It's just it's one of those things where I can't explain where they came from or how their relationship came to be. It just kind of was. And I know that we've seen this relationship throughout the decades in comedy. I think that if you were looking at, like we said, Hyacinth and Richard in Keeping Up Appearances, but go further back than that and look at Ivy and Sid in Last of the Summer Wine, or Nora and Wally. And in fact, there is actually a great scene in one of the Christmas episodes of Last of the Summer Wine where the family acknowledging Wally and Sid's deaths because the actors had died. and you have Nora and Ivy talking about the husbands, and you realise that despite all of the arguing that you got shown on the television, there was love and affection there. And I don't know, I think that it is a big thing, you know, like a lot of people, when they've been in relationships for a long time, constantly, you know, they have these arguments, they have these rows, and this is what people are seeing. And it's like, well, how are they together this time? It's like, well, sometimes it just works. And
in this, you can see that it works with Harold and Doris.
And I think that when people get to Indisputably Doris, there's a very significant point of their relationship, because I did begin to focus more on who they were and how they worked together. And as I say, I was trying to figure out for myself why they'd stayed together so long, why they loved each other. And I think that by the end of the series, we get to know that. I think that the final book is going to inform the first book and how we got there. And I think that, yeah, they just work. They just are. You can't have Harold without having Doris.
Yeah,
and one day I might say his H.
No, you can't. You just can't.
I can't. I literally can't figure it out.
You've got some comments, Charlie.
Yeah, so I'll go to Roz first and go to Kelly and then go back up to Thomas. So Roz said their mutual affection shines through. I'm glad of that, because I did worry.
I love that so much. I agree with you.
Yes, I see much tenderness between them. Beautiful moments, real true love, I like to say. Yeah. And then Thomas said, I'm reading the Half-Bad trilogy. I'm already on the third book. I'm going through the trilogy so fast, feels like I'm beating my dyslexia. Well, that's a great thing.
Wow. Oh, well done, you. Are we gonna start winding it down now? Has anyone else got any final things that you guys watching?
Because we have, I think we're gonna go till past and then call things a night. 2 hours seems like long enough to discuss Doris and the writing of Doris, which if anybody was doing a count, it means that Charlie and I have now spoken to each other for a grand total of...
We've done 4 hours earlier, and it's 2 hours
6
now.
hours. We've spoken to each other for 6 hours today. I've only been... I've literally... We had 5 hours between talking to each other.
So I'm just blowing a kiss to my daughter. I'm sorry.
It's fine. I thought you were just very lightly blowing your cup of tea.
Yeah, that would have been a better thing to say, actually. Yeah. So no, but we always we haven't even you haven't even been awake that long, have you, Charlie?
No, I told you that.
I'm sorry. I'm so sleepy anyway. Annabelle, can you get out of the bedroom now, because you're making the thing move, please, sweetheart. Oh, thank you, Richard.
Because we're about to disappear anyway, so it's fine for Belle to be here for the grand finale. But yes, I think that
thank you guys for coming and watching, and people in the future watching this. Thank you for
Thank you if you stuck around for the entirety of the 2 hours. My goodness. I mean, at least if in the future, if they're watching this, they can double speed it and have it done in an hour. I struggle to watch things. Thank you so much for coming along. When it comes to the next month, we're doing both Indisputably Doris and Doris Ahoy.
We're going to do it all in one video.
Dun, dun, dun. Well, Doris Ahoy is only a short book, so I feel like we can just do the one, can't we?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. Because, you know, Royally Doris is a chunk.
Maybe start it a bit earlier.
Oh, yeah. I've got plans. I do like that we gave them 2 books to read in the shortest month of the year.
Yeah. That'd be fine.
We're cruel people.
Yeah, okay.
I'm a cruel person. Either way.
You're lovely.
Yes, I'm grateful to everybody that say yes. Ta-ra, Callie. Ta-ra, Richard. I should say ta-ra, everybody, really. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to those of you who have read Our Doris and who will join us in reading Indisputably Doris and Doris Ahoy in February. Charlie and I will be back at next week with 2 videos. They're nothing to do with Doris. And they will be on both of our channels. And then we will determine a date for a live show to discuss Indisputably Doris and Doris Ahoy in March. And I can tell you now, it will not be the 8th of March because I'm at Poems and Pints. Either way, yes. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much. We've loved talking to you guys. You guys have been so wonderful. So yeah.
We hope that you have enjoyed this video, because until next time, that is all.